What is Cataclysm, Dark Days Ahead, and how do you play it? Cataclysm is an open-world sandbox game in the roguelike genre, and by roguelike I mean based off the original Rogue. That means procedurally generated maps, permadeath, and time that only passes when your character makes a move. The setting of Cataclysm is a post-apocalyptic Earth where you can imagine basically every cataclysm has occurred. So there are zombies, aliens, eldritch horrors, and many other things which all have one idea in mind, and that is to kill you, the player. In fact, if you decide to play Cataclysm, get used to dying because it will happen a lot. Not only does this game have a very steep learning curve, which is why I'm making this video series, but it is also incredibly difficult. Combat is only one of the challenges, however, and like any good survival game, you'll have to worry about your character's physical needs. Things like food, shelter, entertainment, study materials, weapons, armor. Oh, and you'll probably want to drive a vehicle instead of hiking around in this dangerous world on foot. So there's that too you'll have to worry about. Basically, Cataclysm has it all, and if you're willing to devote a little time to it, then you will discover an incredibly deep and compelling experience that will have you staying up late at night. It is also a free-to-play game with multiple forks for you to try. There are mods which can add things like magical powers for your character to learn and new monsters to add into your world, as well as complete overhaul mods that will give you things like a skyblock challenge or low-tech runs, making your gear out of rocks and sticks. There is a stable branch of the game which is recommended for new players, and that's what we'll be taking a look at today. But there is also an experimental version of Cataclysm that you can access through what's known as the Cat Launcher, and all the links for those will be down in the description of the video. But with all that intro out of the way, let's get into the character creation. Alright, let's jump into the world of Cataclysm. Now first I want to mention that the game is mainly controlled with the keyboard. You'll see me use my cursor maybe to point things out to you, but with that in mind, I have installed a separate program called KeyViz, and it will allow you to see my keystrokes down in the bottom right of the screen. So that's not actually a feature with Cataclysm. It's something I've included, hopefully to make it a little bit easier for you, like I said, to learn those keystrokes. And I'll have a link down below if you're interested in the program. Now, let's look at our settings before we jump in. The first step would be to create a world, and then we'll go in and create a character that will inhabit the world. But first, there is one particular setting I want to go in and change, and I recommend you guys do this as well. Now, I should mention that this is also where you'll choose things like your tile set. So if you don't want to play the ASCII version, which I don't, I prefer a tile set, you can choose from a list here. Now, the default is set to Ultica. It's been explained to me that this is the most complete set, so you'll see the fewest ASCII characters with Ultica, and meaning you'll have nice sprites for everything. And you can choose a different tile set for the overmap too, if you're interested. Like I said, there's also a few other options for the sound here if you want to adjust some of the levels, that's there. But what we're looking for specifically right now is the world defaults. We want to come down here to where it says character point pools, and it will be set to survivor by default. We want to change that to any, and that will become apparent why we're going to do that during character creation. So like I said, we'll explain it here in a moment or two, but let's save those changes. Good. And now we'll come over and create the world. That's right, you can have multiple worlds with different mod loadouts and stuff, so it's really great. But for our first one, we're going to make it pretty vanilla for this series. Like I said, we're just going to focus on gameplay and survival here. But if we look, we've got a few sliders to adjust some stuff. There's also some keys down here. One opens up the advanced options, options, and the other is the mod manager, which we will take a look at. But first, let's address the sliders. So the first one is the city, and it gives us a bit of a description of each of these settings down here as we look through. So essentially, the more cities you have in your world, the harder it's going to be, because cities are, although inhabited with lots of loot and buildings and structures, also tons of zombies. So it can be very dangerous going into a big city. Even just a mid-size or small town can be a death sentence if you don't know what you're doing. So you probably don't want to have it as rural as you can get unless you're going for some sort of really role play challenge. But we're going to stick with the mid here. Like I said, early game, we'll have nice open areas to explore, and then as we get more and more comfortable, maybe we can venture into the cities and see what they hold. But the next slider is going to be difficulty. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, pay attention down here to what it's telling us. It's going to make the monsters tougher and spawn more as we go up. And if we look at the very last one here, you can see it also affects item generation too. So not just about combat, but it's also going to make things like food and clothing and weapons more difficult to find. So we'll stick with the middle road here. And finally, under the sliders, we've got NPCs. Now, NPCs in Cataclysm are very, very in-depth. You can do many things with them, have them fight with you, have them craft or build for you, even do things like farming. So they're very helpful, and you can convince them to join your party permanently. But if you turn this slider down, you're going to see much fewer amount of NPCs. There are a few quest locations that will always occur in your world. There'll be a different, locations in the world, but they'll have NPCs there, such as things like the refugee center and whatnot. Now, with that in mind, let's look at the advanced options, because one of those options is to turn off the meta progress, which is essentially the overall quest line. So this will give you some info on the lore. The quests can also give you some of the best loot in terms of armor in the game, some really interesting stuff. But if you just want the pure survival challenge of Cataclysm, you might want to turn that off. We're going to leave it on for now. Maybe we'll do a bit of questing. And there's also, like I said, the point pools are here under the world options itself, so you can tweak that for specific worlds if you want. Things like mutations by radiation are on. The miscellaneous options is another interesting one. If you want to challenge yourself, you might want to turn on something like wandering hordes, so that the zombie hordes don't just stick in the cities. They'll kind of spread out and into the fields and surrounding countryside, making it more difficult. And obviously, surrounded start, pretty self-explanatory. But with that said, let's generate this world. Oh, I should give you guys a quick look at the mods here. We're not going to go through all of these, and we're not going to use any in our tutorial series. Some of my favorites, though, are No Hope, which makes the game more challenging, and Magicalism is another really great one. It adds magical powers and creatures, but for this run, strictly vanilla, although I do have a whole bunch of other series on my channel with modded playthroughs of the game. One thing I will mention, if we come over to the balance, you can see there's actually 3 mods already installed in this world, and they'll be pre-installed in all the worlds that you create, unless you go in and change that. But as a new player, I would definitely recommend leaving these. Things like disabling NPC food needs, pretty self-explanatory. If you want it more realistic and challenging, get rid of it, and you have to feed your friends. But portal storms, we won't go into the details right now. Maybe we'll encounter one, but just leave that on there, as a new player. And slow down fungal growth. There is a fungal faction, or just like a species in the game, where they can really start to grow out of control if you don't have this. So just for the sake of your computer's processor, you probably want to leave this on, but also you don't really want your world filled with fungus. It can be kind of annoying and stuff. But like I said, just a quick look at the mods. As you become more and more familiar with the game, explore those, because there's some really cool and entertaining ones. But we're going to hit F. I think Gunder is a great name. Name's not important to me right now, so we're going to confirm it. Boom, and there you can see it's in the list now. Now it shows 0, meaning we don't have any characters in this world. So let's jump over here to new game. We're going to select custom character. One last thing I'll point out here on this menu before we jump into our character creation is if you do die, which you will, and you don't want to go through the character creation all over again, you can just randomize. But if you're interested in the last character you created, you really like that one, you don't want to do the whole thing over, go to preset, because your last character will appear in that list. Of course, we don't have any yet, so the list won't show anything for us, but like I said, just to make your life a little bit easier. But let's jump in and create our very first character. Alright, here we are at the character creation screen, arguably one of the most fun parts of any run. Your hopes are still high, you've got all these great ideas you want to try out, but before we jump into it, I just want to give you an idea of what my goal is for the series and kind of how it's going to be formatted going forward. So we'll do individual episodes where we just follow along the life of our character. It won't be split up into different subjects necessarily. It'll be kind of like a Let's Play series, but I'll just be explaining all my ideas and the justifications for why I'm doing certain things. And I should mention too that although I've been playing for I think over a year now, I'm still not an expert in every system of the game. Certain things like mutations and bionics, I barely even scratched the surface of. But like I said, I just want to show you some of the ropes. I think I do have a good enough handle on some of the beginning mechanics to get you at least to survive for a few days, because I know how it can be in games like this if you die over and over again. Sometimes out of frustration you just end up giving up, so we want to avoid that, basically, is the goal. Now let's jump into it. So that little change we made to our settings earlier is directly what affected this right here. If we hadn't have made that change and switched it from survivor to any, we would only have this first option. And what that is, it's no point limits are enforced. Create a character with the intention of telling a story or challenging yourself. So with the point limits, we obviously can't create a super overpowered character. It's balanced, and we'll see how that is, because this is what we're going to use. But Survivor's good. You know, if you are new, don't be ashamed of creating like a really overpowered character to just get into the world and kind of explore, get used to some of the enemies. I did that for my very first time, and it was a lot of fun. So I recommend it, but for ours, we're going to go with the single pool. This is the legacy mode. It's a little bit less complicated than the multi-pool, which is still fun, and it's a great way of building your character. You know, it challenges you, but the single pool is the legacy mode, so we'll just go with that one, and you'll see exactly what this is here in a second. So I'm going to tab to the scenario. Now we've got a list of stuff. Again, lots of information presented here, especially during the character creation. Don't get overwhelmed by it. You know, some of these things we're just going to stick with the default here, like evacuee. This is fine with me. It's going to basically set us up in an area. So the scenario determines where you'll spawn in the world. So you can see that's going to give us an evac shelter. There's 3 possible locations with 4 different variants there. It will even tell you the time of year and the day that you're going to start. I will key you into this fact: zombies and certain enemies mutate over time. As the world gets older and older, the enemies get more and more difficult. So as a new player, you really do want to start in the spring, just to give yourself, you know, so you're not facing off with these huge horrors that have mutated, because some of these scenarios will start you off a bit later in the world time frame. But like I said, for beginning purposes, evacuee, perfectly good start. It's not too overpowered. We're going to be in a building that's relatively safe. Nothing is truly safe in the world of Cataclysm, but like I said, read through some of these too if you want. You know, maybe you do want to try one. Another one I would recommend for new players is Wilderness. This is a good one. There's a couple of locations you can, sometimes it just starts you in the middle of the woods. There are a couple locations where it will start you in a campground, and sometimes there'll be like a dog zombie or a regular zombie there, which could be tricky for a new player to deal with right off the bat. So like I said, we'll stick with evacuee as a new player, but certainly as you get more and more used to these and you try them, you know, go through the list. But here's the profession. So this is another really extensive list here, starting from the bottom, going all the way back to the top. There's a lot of professions. And here we're also going to start to see, does this cost points? I actually don't think, I thought that this one did cost points. Maybe it's not. Let's go to background here. Boating license. Did I not put the points on there? We have it set to survivor. Whoops. Okay, so let's highlight and then select single pool, and that pops up our total points. That's what I was looking for. I was confused about that. And yeah, even the scenarios will change your points. Some of them will be more challenging, so they'll give you points, which you can then place in your stats or traits down the road here. But evacuee is just plain old even Steven, so we'll stick with that. Over here to profession, again, some of these are going to tweak your points, some of them won't, some of them will cost you points as you get, you know, start with maybe more and more gear and stuff, you know, your point cost is going to go up. So what we'll do as a beginner, Survivor's pretty basic. You can see all the stuff you'll have. Pocket knife, extremely helpful. A little bit of water to start. A smartphone. That way we'll know the time of day and things like that. We can set an alarm when we sleep. And obviously a matchbook. We all know what that's for. Clothing, we're in spring again, so it's not like we need to be outfitted with a whole bunch of winter gear. In fact, that would overheat us, you know, in spring and summer. So we don't necessarily want too much. And we'll be able to find plenty of clothes as we go around. So again, look through some of these, you know, as a new player. There's a ton of them. We're not going to go through all of them. Well, a couple that I would probably recommend for a new player, one would be backpacker. Where's that one? I've seen backpacker is a good one. Might cost us a point or two. Let's see, that costs a single point, but with this one, you'll get a nice hiking backpack to start, which can be really key early game because you're going to be finding tons of loot. And if you're like me, you want to keep all of it. So it's tough starting without a proper backpack. But Survivor doesn't have the benefit of a backpack, although we'll be able to put things in our jeans pockets, and they have a little messenger bag. So we're not totally starting off without any inventory space. But next, we'll go to the background. These can add or cost points, but some of these you'll see will occur when you select your profession or your scenario. So essentially background, I almost think of it as more for role playing. Like I don't put these on unless I'm really designing a specific type of character. Now, one thing I will tell you, a little bit of a hint here, always put on boating license, driving and boating license. These like 5 or 6 skills here will always be highlighted for every character right off the bat. And boating license is a freebie. It doesn't cost a single point. It doesn't give you any points, but it will make you a little bit more proficient if you happen to find a boat and want to drive one, or if you build a boat. So like I said, just a bit of a tip, and you know, go through these, check them out yourself. Maybe you do want to, you know, design like a wrestling expert who is also great at parkour or something. You can do that in the background tab. But the next 3 tabs are the really important ones here. The previous ones are also important, but these are where we're really going to tailor our character's strengths and weaknesses here. So we've got our basic attributes: strength, dexterity, intelligence, perception. At first, they cost 1 point, and yeah. Okay, and even if you want to increase even further, it starts to cost more points. So what we'll do, in order to preserve our points, we've only got 8. We haven't spent too many of them. Let's just do strength and dexterity, and I also really like perception. And again, you can look through this list and kind of see what it's given us. In fact, you know what? Let's just go to 9s across the board, and we only have 4 points left now, but we'll go to the next tab, the traits tab, and with this, we can get some points back by giving ourselves negative traits here, in addition to spending points by giving ourselves positive. So we've got positive here, negative, and then this third column is just for appearances. So if we just come over here, I can change my eye color really quick. We'll give our guy a beard. What kind of hair do we say? Oh, a mohawk, definitely a mohawk. Come down, there's a couple of like little traits here. Where are they? It's weird they put these here, but no, maybe on the stable branch they're not in this version. That's okay. So we'll just focus on skin tone. We'll say light brown, Beautiful. All right. Now we'll come back over to the traits. Of course, physical appearance is really just for looks. There's nothing that will have an impact on the game in this column. These two will definitely have an impact on the game. So let's start off by looking at a couple of the positive traits. One which I almost always include on all my characters, and if you're new, you probably want this one too, is fleet-footed. That's right. So fleet-footed actually does cost 2 points here. Let's see, it costs 2. You can see that. I've got 4 total. And if we select it, boom. And you can see there's also limits to the amount of traits you can put on. So if I give myself a whole bunch of negatives or something like, now that's just, of course, in this single pool. If you're playing Survivor with no limits, you can put on every one of these traits if you wanted. But back to fleet-footed, if we look at the bottom, it just says gives us a 15% speed bonus on sure footing. And let me tell you what, you're going to be doing a lot of running away in this game. So fleet-footed, again, is an essential one for me. Personally, you build your character how you like, but with this guy, we'll go with that. I also really enjoy... Quick is good, too. It's a little bit expensive. It costs 3 points. Also, strong back is great because that can increase how much you carry. That's 2 points. Let's see. Let's go over to... Indefatigable is the one I was thinking of. This costs another 2 points. This basically gives you a better cardiovascular system, you could think of it. It says your cardio fitness and max stamina are higher. So it kind of goes really nicely with fleet-footed. So we'll put those 2 positive traits on. Now, that actually leaves us with 0 points. So let's come over here to the negative traits and tack a couple of those on. That'll give us a few extra points that we'll then be able to spend in our skills tab. And if you want, you can actually go back and use some of these points like in your stats or something too. It doesn't have to be just in the next tab. But if we go, there's a couple in this list which I really like, which don't make it too difficult, but also still do balance it out, obviously. And one of those is right here at the top of the list. It is addictive personality. So it's easier for you to become addicted to substances and harder to get rid of these addictions. There's a whole slew of drugs in the game, all the real world ones you've ever heard of, plus I think some fictional ones too. But my thinking is, if you don't want to get addicted to them, don't use them. There's no reason you have to use any of those addictive drugs. Maybe there's certain opiates you would use to, relieve pain, but you could abstain from those too. So addictive personality is one I like because it's totally under your own control. You don't have to smoke. You don't have to drink. Now, a few others down here, if we look, and that gave us 2 points back too, by the way. Pay attention to that. Very nice. Here's one I really like too, junk food intolerance. Now, this is going to make the game more challenging. It basically locks off a whole section of foods. Anything that's considered junk food is going to be in red, and when you try and eat it, it's going to give you a warning telling your character's not going to like this if you eat this. It's going to give them a huge morale penalty. We won't put that on our current character, but it's just one I wanted to point out. You can see there's a few that adjust your dietary needs, like meat intolerance, so really cool. Nearsighted's another interesting one. You will start with glasses if you choose this. So your character actually gets a pair of glasses. It says it right here. Same is true with farsighted. You could put on both nearsighted and farsighted, and you would just get a pair of really magnifying glasses. Down at the very bottom, though, there's one called wool allergy, which is one I like to take. Very self-explanatory. You just can't wear gear which is made of wool. But for my purposes, there's a lot of different winter clothing options in this game which aren't made of wool. And that gave us an extra point, so we're at 3. Let's do one more. Pyromaniac's a really fun one. I almost think it is like a positive trait in disguise as a negative trait, because true, if you don't light enough fires, your character will become upset eventually, but when you do, you get a mood boost for it, and that's the apocalypse. You can set a bush on fire every once in a while. Nobody's going to call the cops on you, so let's do a pyromaniac start. I like that. Fleet-footed, indefatigable with pyromaniac, and a couple others. All right, next we go to the skills, and we've got 5 points to play with. And just one more thing to touch on under traits, we could have kept going. I could have kept balancing it with more negatives up to the limit here. That's what these numbers represent. So as long as you don't exceed that 12 or negative positive. So let's go to skills now. There's quite a few. I don't want to give you too many recommendations. I want you to kind of just learn these on your own. But since we are playing the way that I like to play, and what I would say would be the best way for a new player, go with piercing. Put 1 point in piercing. That's essentially spears. You think spears when you think piercing. That's how this game deals with weapon skills. You're not going to see like a skill in spears. You'll see a skill in piercing weapons. And then when you look at a spear, it's going to have mainly piercing damage. Maybe a little bit of bash damage too on the spear. For instance, a sword like a katana would be mainly cutting. So that's just how it works, and we'll see that a bit more in detail as we go. So piercing weapons, because I really like spears, and they have a great advantage in the beginning of the game and all throughout. So it might not be a bad idea to put one in melee too, but then again, we'll probably level that up pretty quick just as we're poking people with our spears. So what I'm going to come down here and do and spend the rest of my points on mechanics. I'm going to put myself up to mechanics 3 by using 2 points, and then I'm going to do electronics 3. I like that because it helps me get a leg up on creating a vehicle, or, repairing a vehicle, I should say, most likely, which is definitely an early game goal for me. The world is so dangerous. Hiking around is going to be a death sentence. You're going to run into something eventually, which is going to be faster than you, and it's going to kill you. If you have a car, hey, just run it over if you need to, right? So with that said, we go to the last tab, the description tab. There's a few choices here to make, but they're pretty much all aesthetic. I guess maybe you could argue the height isn't and the age, but I've never really had much impact with height or age or blood type. So let's go with the name. Actually, we'll just do a random name. That's fine with me. We can change the gender to female. You can even change the outfit. We'll stick with male for our guy. We can go up a little bit. We'll do an even 6 foot, 26 years old. Again, blood type never had any impact on a game. Maybe it does have some impact down the road, maybe with a quest or something, I don't know, but we're looking good. So here we can just kind of see an overview of who we've created. So if we want to go back and tweak something, you can still do that at this point. But if we hit tab one more time, it says, are you sure you're finished? Your name will be randomly generated because we didn't pick one. And if we say yes, boom, starts to load up, and we are instantly in the world. Look at this. All right, playing once again with the Ultica tile set. So if you chose something different as a tile set, it will look slightly different to what I'm playing, but essentially they're still the same, entities. They just look slightly different. So we've got the sidebar over here. It's going to give us kind of heads up display on several different bits of information. This at the very top is a readout of our bodily parts and how damaged or undamaged they are. Currently, they're all in perfect condition. If I hit Shift plus N, that'll actually bring that up a little bit bigger. So this, what we see here is this representation. And again, 5 green bars vertical means all these body parts are in perfect condition. If I were to stub my toe, for instance, or if it was bitten by a zombie, you would start to see these bars disappear, turn into different symbols. They'll even change colors, become like yellow and pink. You'll know this. We'll refer to this window many times as we go through and stuff. You can also see some stats here. Again, lots of information presented to you all at once. Don't get too overwhelmed by it. Just learn as slowly as you need to. Explore each different menu, methodically, or not at all, like the way I play. So here we are right in the middle. There's actually another character just to our north. This is Sharon Livingston. I can see that on my little heads up display. That's telling me we've got another person in sight. If there was a monster or zombie, it would also be listed here too as well. Now, with that said, we could hit Shift plus C to bring up our dialogue and talk to Sharon. Let's see, what do we got going on here? There's a whole bunch of different dialogue options. She's not a companion of ours. She's just an NPC who happens to be in the same evac shelter with us. We might be able to get her to give us a quest. She does have a job for us. What is it? Sure, tell me all about it. Does our flag still yet wave? We're battered, but not out of the fight. We need the old colors. So she wants us to go pick up a flag from somewhere, who knows. You can actually ask her if she's got any advice. Find a large federal building or school. They must have one. There we go. Sounds good. Thanks. All right, so we'll say goodbye. There's a few other dialogue options, but we're not going to be able to recruit her most likely until we do one or two of her quests for her. Usually that's how it works with NPCs, unless you have a really high social skill. If you generated your character with one, or if you just read enough books to get your social level up, yeah, you're not going to be able to recruit people until they like you a bit. But if I hit Shift plus M, that brings up the missions. That's right. So we can see we've got a mission now. Find the flag for Sharon Livingston. And we can actually track this. So if I hit enter on that and we reopen it, it should show that it's being tracked. I think it'll show it on the map. Oh no, this isn't one that can be tracked. That's right. This is just a general quest. We just got to go find a flag somewhere. Now we can see it's very dark down here, but if I use the smartphone, so I hit A to activate, and it brought up a list of items in my inventory that can be activated, and I'm going to select the smartphone. You can actually see some, like, what the actions are. If I select my pocket knife, we'll write on an item or cut up an item. If I had activated my matches, we'd start a fire. The smartphone has a bunch of different options, so it just gives us the little ellipsis there. And here are the options for the smartphone. So we can see at the bottom, turn on flashlight. There's a bunch here, cameras, there's everything from calories. You can copy books, physical books you find in the world, onto your smartphone if you want to save them digitally and then go back and read them at your leisure, so you don't have to lug around big books and stuff. But you can even play music for a bit of a mood boost. It will diminish your combat abilities though when you've plugged your ears up, so be careful. But we're going to pop on the flashlight, and boom, you can see the room is a little bit more illuminated. The cell phone flashlight is not very strong, so it's not going to illuminate the entire room, but if we get a more powerful flashlight, it will. All right, so now we're walking close to this set of lockers here, and it's going to indicate something right away. See these little dashes? This means that there is not only loot indicated by what looks like a small little cup or container, but it means there's multiple items of loot in this square, in this locker here. All right, so by hitting the G button, it's going to ask me in which direction do I want to pick up items where. So before we do that, let me just show you that if you hit Shift plus the question mark button right there, it will bring up the key bindings list, and it is pretty extensive. One of the most difficult things about the game is getting used to all the keybinds and stuff. There is a search function, so if I hit the backslash, there, it will bring up something we can type, and actually I don't even need to. Yeah, that I think the typing thing is already brought up, but that is another helpful tip. If you're, for instance, in your inventory screen, maybe you've got a whole bunch of stuff, / will allow you to search for matches. And if I didn't put the S on there and the ES, boom, then it would pop up. Excellent. So / great way to search for certain things and commands, but the question mark button, here it is. Now you'll notice too, there are several things which are not bound right away. And just another tip, if you're searching for a button to actually bind one of these commands to, because you can see most of the keyboard is already used up, the F buttons, the F1 through F12, are mainly unused by default. So a lot of these will probably end up binding ourselves as we go. But first things first, let's use one of the most important commands, the G, or get is kind of how I like to think of it. G to pick up stuff. And now I've ordered it to pick up in the locker directly to the south of my character, and it brings up a full list of stuff here. A lot of this is going to be trash, but we definitely want some clean water and this protein ration. Food and water going to be very important. We don't need any of the plastic stuff. That emergency jacket, not really necessary now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what we want, and then I push the right arrow button to bring it over to this side of the list, items to be picked up. And we'll come down to the protein. There we go. Now we've got those. I'll hit enter. Beautiful. And if we check our inventory, so this is my personal inventory, the tools, here's what I'm wearing. You can now see that water and protein ration are in our pockets, essentially. And we've still got 2 other lockers to check. So we're going to check the one on the left. I'm going to grab that. Oh, look at this. Somebody's put a lighter in here too. So we're definitely going to grab the lighter. The whistle can come in handy at certain points, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Remember, we do have fairly limited carrying capacity. So if you're interested, right up here in the upper right of this window, basically any window related to your inventory, is going to show you your carrying capacity in weight, in pounds, and you can change this in the options if you want it in another type. But you can also see the volume, which is important too. So it takes into effect not just the weight, but the size, the overall bulkiness of an item too. So if you have a really small messenger bag, you're probably not going to be able to fit like a baseball bat in it, even though it weighs less than what you could carry. So just a little side note for that. And did we pick them up? Let's go back over here, grab those things. Good, good, good. So if we go back to our inventory, you see now I've got 2 lighters because there was 2 there. That's totally fine with me. And we've got a little extra water. We got some protein rations. We're good to go. So let's keep exploring. This area that we're in is very dark, but we're inside. So if we want to take a step outside real quick, we'll just open the front door. Uh-oh, there's an enemy out there already. So let's go back inside real quick. I think... There we go. We'll just turn safe mode on. All right. And yeah, we'll just close the door up. We'll go back outside in a moment, but I just wanted to show you that we're essentially just in a small evac shelter building here. It's very dark. There's also windows. We can open the curtains, close them up. There could be stuff out there. And if it sees us, it will try and break in. So we don't want to expose ourselves too much. There's a little computer here. I will briefly mention this. If I hit E to interact with this and then signal the computer tile, it's going to pop up this window. The computer awaits input. When you're at an evac shelter, any evac shelter, you can find the location of what's called the refugee center, which is a very important location. There's going to be one of these in every world that you create. It'll be at different locations randomly, but it's going to have a whole bunch of quests, lots of NPCs you can trade with and stuff. You can totally ignore it and again choose to play just however you want, but if you are interested in going to the refugee center, you want to go to the contact us option, and then it's going to give you a little notice here and it says make a note of the location. So if we hit this, the game will process usually for a moment or two, and then if we exit out when it's ready, now by hitting the M button, I can open up our overworld map here. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that the computer that we just interacted with has now given us a route. Oops, got side scrolling turned on. So we can actually see the refugee center is right there. And let me tell you what, we've gotten pretty lucky here in this world because there's nothing that says that the refugee center has to be like close to spawn. It can be hundreds, if not thousands of squares away. But like I said, we've just got to somehow get around the city of Maxfield and we can go visit the refugees. Very helpful location. So we've interacted with that. There's not much else that'll do for us. So let's just move on. We've got some more lockers here. I'm going to look through these and I'm going to be raiding all their food. Oh, now here's a battery. That's going to be helpful. Yeah, we'll grab that light disposable battery, some more rations. Okay, so these 2 lockers on the end don't have anything in them. They just show the locker. There's no icon, there's no dots. So just got to start getting accustomed to when things are empty versus when they have items in them. So I'm just going around the perimeter of the room. Now this door is locked. When I try and move into it, it does not open, and the tooltip over here says it's locked. But hey, look at this. There's something on the countertop. What's that? Oh, there's a bunch of protein rations there. Let's check this spot. Dang. Not bad, not bad. Same computer. The multiple computers in the same building like this, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they all do the same thing. So let's see, did we check this side? The evac shelter start, like I mentioned, is good for beginners because you do get option to loot this food right off the bat, and I'm definitely going to be taking it. There we go. Clean water. Oop, no, I don't want the Tupperware. Excellent. Yeah. Now, if we want to eat in the game, we just hold shift and push the E button, and that will bring up the consume screen. This is also where things like your medicines will occur. So if you've got, injuries, you need to apply band-aids, you'll eat the band-aids or consume them, essentially. Same with like medicines too. But now you can see we've got 64 protein rations and some clean water. It even gives us a breakdown of the calories, the quench value, and joy. So actually that's a negative number. Pay attention to that, because that's going to mean the more of these protein rations, the lower our mood is going to get. That's right, morale is a thing too. If your character's mood gets too low, they'll refuse to do certain actions. They won't fight, they won't butcher. So you want to keep that morale up. That's definitely something to consider. Even tells us how long it takes to consume, which can be very important if you're in combat or in a time frame situation for whatever reason. But we have basically explored the surface level of the evac shelter, but as you can see, indicated by these stairs, there is a downstairs portion. Let's go below using the over arrow command. Yeah, shift plus the over arrow like that will take us down. If I want to go back up, it's shift plus the left arrow there. And so we came down into this little entranceway, this little stairwell here. Let's go to the south, pop open that door. I'm fairly certain in this evac shelter start, there's not going to be any zombies down here below, but I'm going to take it slow and cautious. Just kind of look around. Got a bathroom here. Oh, look. Yeah, somebody's tried to stuff some of their drugs into the trash can. We'll grab those. If we hit E while we're in the inventory screen like this, we can bring up a more, detailed breakdown of what this item is. Everything from its weight to if we scroll all the way down, we should be able to see its barter value and its price. So you can imagine price is essentially the cost before the Cataclysm. Barter is closer to what you'll get when you trade it to NPCs. It's still going to be dependent on your social skill versus the NPC's social skill. So this number is not exact, but it is closer than this to what you'll actually get in trade value. So something like this with a relatively low weight with a decent value could be good to pick up. And if you're planning on going to an NPC area with traders, right now we're not going to fill our pockets with everything, especially not with illicit substances. But okay, I'm just browsing, seeing it. Really, we're looking, here we go. So we're looking for medicine, and we just found a first aid box. If you'll notice, it's got an arrow indicating that there's 21 items, but they're hidden. If we want to unhide that, we're going to, essentially like we were stepping down the stairs again, it's shift plus that little arrow to the right. What that does is it opens the first aid box, and now we can see what's inside. So there's bandages, adhesive bandages, and there's a booklet which we could read and learn from. There's also tape and gauze. Now, we're starting to get full. Yeah, I've gotten to the point where my pockets are full. We could carry a lot more because we're a big, strong, strapping guy, but we just don't have enough space on our person. So I can't pick up things like the gauze, the booklet won't fit. We're limited to very small items at this point, and pretty soon we're not going to be able to pick anything up at all. But that's okay, because the bandages and the tape, that's my priority for sure. I'd like this gauze too, but yeah, that's okay. We'll just grab that stuff. Now, at this point, my bags are pretty full, but I would still recommend going through and just looking. Oh, for instance, there's a headlamp. Yeah. So instead of putting this in my pocket, we can wear this item. So if from this screen, the pickup screen, if I hit Shift plus W, the item disappears. And if we check our inventory over here on the right, items worn, the headlamp is now on my head. That's right, because I hit Shift plus W and we are now wearing it. So instead of, like I said, taking up more volume, certain things can just be put directly on the body. But, that presents certain problems. If you load yourself up with a bunch of coats, it's going to be difficult for you to fight, and you're going to overheat pretty quickly too. So keep that in mind. But going through down here real quick with the rest of this loot, there's pencils. We don't have any need for a pencil. There's a stick in this trash can, more whistles, some bleach. Bleach can be good if you want to disinfect some bandages down the road. There's even toilet plungers. One of the coolest parts of this game is the sheer variety and just the scale of lootable items. It's insane. As I mentioned, I've been playing this game for over a year now, streaming it, and I swear every time I find something new, whether it's an item or a new enemy, it's insane just how much stuff is in this game. But there we go. We got another battery. We can fit that in our pocket. There's still food left here too. So we could return to this location once we find a bigger backpack. If we get another hiking bag, we can come back here and continue to loot it. And obviously we're going to want to return so we can return the flag to our new friend, Sharon Livingston, and maybe even recruit this person once we've got our reputation up with them a little bit. But we haven't even left the shelter, guys, and our time has already ended for the first episode of the tutorial series. But I hope you've at least learned a little bit about character creation, world generation, and just some of the starting commands that you can do. Don't worry, there's going to be a lot more videos to come. We're going to get into it with our Mohawk friend here. I didn't even notice his name. What was his name? I'm not sure. Hold on. All right, here's his character screen. Antoine Rock. That's his name. What a solid name for our buddy here. So, again, we can see this is brought to us by hitting the Shift. Hold on. The Shift plus 2, so the @ symbol. We can bring up the character screen. There it is. Yeah, and we can see a lot of the different things. We can keep track of our skills, things like that, even our proficiencies as we gain them. But so much to cover, guys. That's why it can't all be included in one video. It's going to have to be a multi-part series. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, so when we do put out a new video in this tutorial series, you'll be able to watch it right away, hopefully apply some of the lessons you've learned, and leave me some comments down below. Let me know if it's been helpful, maybe some of the topics you'd like to see covered, and I will see you guys on the next one.